So, guys, I want to review episode 9 of Elfin Lead, and definitely another really great episode, Reminiscence. And I think, like, when you watch the Elfin Lead series, that I think that after episode 8, the episodes start to get, better and better, really. Because, honestly, we do feel for Lucy and we see her backstory. And then after this is really what happens to her is that she meets Coda and as a child, really, and they're both children. So it's a little interesting how their relationship starts because she runs into Coda, and Coda is actually really respectful to her, and he actually likes her horns and everything, and just her personality, really, and I think that also Coda has, because he's a child, he has a lot of naivety. So the fact that Lucy talks to herself, the fact that Lucy has a tendency to violence, I think that sometimes that having a child's innocence, he kind of overlooks that. And it's also interesting when you look at this episode because what Lucy does to survive is she actually goes around to different people's houses and kills like people in their whole family just so she can like have a place to stay and live. And it's really interesting because it kind of gives you that dichotomy of like what people say about Lucy's character, which is is Lucy a good character or a bad character? Like, is her evil justified? And the answer is no. That bad is bad. um and as I've said about Lucy, she is a sociopath because of just having a mental breakdown and choosing to hurt others. I think it's understandable, but it's never really right, really. So they have a day together. So they go to the zoo, and you see like Lucy kind of just like you see some comic relief, like how she kind of like overreacts to an elephant by saying, "Wow, look! I wonder how he got so big." And then also you see them eating like like ice with syrup on it, and they splash each other. Like, really, this is supposed to be almost like giving Lucy a really happy day, really. And then also, I think when you watch this episode, it's like a calm before the storm. You know how bad the show. Like what's looming in the air. Things are going to get bad. Like just like with a Quentin Tarantino film, like the opening of Inglourious Bastards. You have a tendency to know that the ending is going to end very, very bad. So you almost feel really sad through the episode for Lucy because you're like, that things are going to end up bad for her. And I think like what happens is that there's this festival, and what happens is that like Lucy, that Coda tells Lucy, what, he's actually leaving, and she goes to the festival to run into Coda. And what happens is Coda said that he's going to that festival with his cousin, and she lies, and Coda lies to Lucy by saying it's actually his cousin's actually a male, and Lucy doesn't understand family dynamics. She doesn't understand that a cousin is not like a boyfriend girlfriend; it's a family member. So obviously, um, it it's not like she's being betrayed by him going with another girl and stuff like that. Um, and then there's another part of this episode is that Lucy kind of has a mental breakdown, and in her psyche, she sees like this version of herself, covered in like bandages, almost like very mummified. And this person like tells her that like you need to abandon yourself, you need to embrace the inner evil because people will betray you, people will hurt you, people will want to kill you. The best You don't belong in this world, but so since you don't belong in this world, the best way to belong in this world is to create a new world by eliminating everybody. So it reminds me a lot of what Pain said in Naruto about like sometimes the you have to establish a level of control. You have to establish power to act. You have to try to control the world by destroying others. In order to make a peaceful world, you got to destroy others, really. And I think that's one of the themes of Naruto is that while that's true, like just all the destruction that you do is never justified. Or even if you look at the Japanese anime noir, where there's this cult and their philosophy is that man is so evil that the best way to show atonement for mankind is to be more evil than mankind, which is wildly stupid. If war happens and thousands of people die, it doesn't make sense for a syndicate to kill hundreds of thousands of people to be like, okay, we're way worse than this atrocity that happened, really, but as I can tell you from mental health issues, is that obviously people who have mental health issues or embrace a philosophy that's kind of stupid or dangerous or toxic, sometimes it comes from a mental breakdown. And I've experienced that, in my own life. But I remember, but I would say this, that I really think that it's really sad to see Lucy just turn from a person that just had this one like gleaming hope of humanity, and then just turn, just completely evil and psychotic, really, um, because she just felt betrayed by Coda, thinking that um, like thinking that they were like, boyfriend and girlfriend almost, and in a certain way, and then she actually finds out that he's going with his cousin, and she doesn't understand what a cousin is, really. So she thinks that it's she's being cheated on, and then she goes into a violent killing spree. And it's a little sad at the festival, because there's people that kick her to the ground and say like, okay, they think that there's this drunk guy like saying, like, you're street trash. And then there's also another woman saying that, oh, well, she's strung out on drugs. And this is like Lucy. At this time, she has to be, like either between 6 or 8 years old. So it does feel a little unrealistic, but I do know that this is Japan. So sometimes I'm not sure about Japanese culture, but I do think that, there could be sense of abuse towards children, or if there's a homeless child, there could be a sense of treating them like, they're undesirable. Like, I think in a lot of Japanese anime, you kind of see that. So I'm not sure if it's still like that when this anime was created in the early 2000s. But again, I think it's kind of like a really, as I said, a reiterating theme is that it's really almost like evil begets evil. You see how the kids at the orphanage and treated Lucy, and then she become evil. You see how these people just really break her down, and then Coda had to lie to Lucy to say, what she that her, about the gender of his cousin, and yeah, obviously, I think what Lucy doesn't understand is that his lie is not that bad. Really, it may be hurtful, but it's not like lying to take her puppy or take an animal and then just beat it to death, really. But obviously, it's just she has multi-layered trauma. She has multi-layered trust versus mistrust issues, and she has a tendency to violence, really. So it's almost like that old saying, like, you don't know who you're messing with. Like, look at how much she got better because Coda actually just, was good to her. So, you really don't understand the impact that you have on somebody, like with how you can make them a good person or a bad person. I don't mind talking about two personal stories. That I remember, like, me and my brother were adopted out of an abusive situation. My older brother had mental health issues, and what happened was that when he was in foster care, the story of him was that he kind of was doing better. People were understanding and patient with him. But when our adopted parents adopted him, he had like a lot more behavioral issues, because my dad was always forcive and not really patient with him, and my adopted parents were abused, really. So they were kind of almost like, saying, like when my brother said, like, I have a hard time making friends, they had him to tell you, well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, and just very, very harsh. And I remember one time, like when my brother was 8 years old, he ran out of the house. My dad kind of grabbed him, and he got punished for that. And it was always like, you're punished for not making friends, or if you don't know the name of all 30 people in your class, no TV, no Nintendo, really. My brother developed a personality through his life, really, of just, not wanting to have friends, because I think there was a social anxiety that he had. But obviously it came from, my parents being way too harsh on him, and then my parents are a bit narcissistic, or they'll have an attitude of, okay, well, I messed this person up, so, I'm going on to the next thing, really. So my parents don't realize, but I'll say this, that they were emotionally abusive without realizing it. So that's an example of how, like, compassion can really help a person, but the lack of compassion can really, ruin a person. A little story about me is that I used to work at Southern Connecticut State University in Connecticut, and I remember how I was doing a great job there, and I came from a job with a lot of bullying, and so I was working hard, doing the right thing, and then people just knew that I worked very hard, so they paired me with somebody who came to work drunk, and he sexually harassed me. He'd be whipping his dick out, peeing by dumpsters. He'd get so drunk when he come to work, he'd be speaking different voices, almost assaulting me, making up lies, saying that, whatever work he's not doing is actually, the stuff that I was supposed to be responsible for. And it didn't end until I actually, worked another shift. And then I also was bullied a lot in the New Haven film community. And I remember like how I had a mental breakdown. And I said that, what it seems like, only just bad and manipulative and conniving people are actually get ahead, really. And I also remember at that time, my dad was running for governor of Connecticut. He did a commercial mentioning that me and my brothers were all black children with autism. And I'm actually not autistic, and I'm not black. I'm actually mixed race. But I remember having a breakdown because, I want to be a filmmaker, but my dad was just, exploiting that. And I had a mental breakdown. And I remember my psychiatrist at the time I was seeing, his mentality was always, whenever bad things happen to me, I need to just, focus on getting a better job, being a hardworking black man, because he was also an old white guy born in the 30s that had a mentality of that, I'm mixed race, but he always saw me as a black man. Like he wants me to be Sidney Poitier or a responsible black man, just like Chris Rock's teacher, like, just always having those stereotypes. But his mentality was always, what, whenever bad things happen to me, whenever people hurt me, I need to ignore, not stand up for myself, and then just persevere, really. And that's a bad philosophy because it teaches somebody to go through life and just be a punching bag. And I remember having a mental breakdown because of that, because, I don't want to go through life being somebody's fool or whatever, really, So I remember how, I broke down one day and I said, seems like if I behave like a sociopath or mean and cruel, manipulative as other people, I'll get far in life. And I remember like I heard a bunch of people, it led to me losing my job. But when I lost my job, there were a bunch of lies and manipulation told by me, really. It was really just, to ruin me, really. And I've also mentioned, like how I was sexually harassed. And I was also mentioning how I had some bosses just manipulate me and say, you need to keep it to yourself because it's rumor spreading. And how some bosses, when one of my bosses said they're going to take me to human resources so we can talk about what happened to me on third shift. The day after that, they wrote me up for coming to work late and they were laughing in my face about it. So just like Lucy, I think that I had a breakdown because of all the mean people that I've experienced in my life. But I've also learned a very hard lesson, which is that sometimes when we live life, there may be some really mean people, or there may be some horrible people, or there may be some people who just don't care about the damage that they do, but you still gotta be a good person. Bad is bad, really. It's understandable when you look at Lucy's character or some of my stories about how a person can turn bad, but still bad is bad, and that's kind of the one thing you gotta learn from this anime is that Lucy is still a villain character, a tragic villain. She's a tragic villain, but nonetheless, she is a villain. But with my stories, I think that I've learned, and I'm trying to tell you about like how, a lack of compassion, a lack of respect kind of really, really hurt me. And, it made me go down a path of a tragic villain almost. But I've learned, I've atoned, I made my life a lot better. And I've learned that, quite obviously, I got to just not be so vulnerable. And I also just learned that, that I may never have the right support system for me, but I still got to do the right thing. Like I remember like a year or two ago, 3 years ago, I quit seeing my psychiatrist because he still had that mentality, even though when I was getting fired, of almost like he overlooked all the lies and whatever. And it was always just about, my behavior. But I was like, I said, I can't work with this guy anymore because I'm going to turn into a person that goes through life, only criticizing my behavior, or only my behavior is criticized, but not how other people are treating me. So I left him bad reviews because obviously, you'd show up late. He would just say things like it sounded crazy. out and talk about my race. I remember one time I drank a bunch of soda and I was like a little hyper, and he thought that I was on drugs. So I left him some bad reviews, and I remember him sending a letter back saying that he wishes he never taught me to be a victim. That really hurt me because I've been through a lot of traumatic things, almost murdered by the police and other like things I told him about, and struggled with suicidal thoughts, and that really hurt me. And then I sent him an apology letter 2 years later, and then he sent me a letter back saying that once I think you have antisocial disorder, and once I realized that, I lost all respect for you, but I wish you well. And that was really hurtful and painful to me, really. But it was almost like saying, fuck you too, type of thing. But I've learned a lot from my experiences. I learned from Elfin Lead in this episode that yes, people are very fragile. There are some people more sensitive than others, and it's not that hard to for your actions to cause a person to become horrible or evil. And Lucy is violence beget violence. It's just the bad of human beings that made her bad. And that's why we always need to be kind and compassionate to each other. But even like with my situation, I was taught that, I was really taught, just self apathy. Whenever bad things happen to me, it doesn't matter. It should be motivation for me to get a better job. It's not about how I suffer. It's not about my suffering. It's about my results. And also too, it's also about how I treat others, but not how other people treat me, really. And I remember just having a breakdown because of it. So it's very painful when people suffer like that. But in the end of the day, we all have to be good people, and there are consequences for actions. I think that even though this is made in the early 2000s, I think Lucy's definitely in anime. She's one of the best villains ever. Because she's so like psychologically complicated. It's definitely trauma influencing her behavior. It's trust versus mistrust issues. It's anger. It is, it's almost like, and maybe she's kind of like a metaphor for mankind. About like how mankind can be so cruel. And sometimes, there are consequences for the violence that we create, like eventually, violence begets violence and all that, So like the cycle of hate, as one of the themes in Naruto, so it's definitely unfortunate that she turned into an evil person and she turned to an evil character, but, two wrongs don't make a right. And I hope we can all understand that. Her actions make her a sympathetic villain, but never forget that she needs to be always looked at as a villain character, never as a good character or even a character to be inspired by. Like when you do wrong and you hurt others in response to people doing wrong to you, two wrongs don't make it right.